Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Bob.
New liturgical year, not a chronological year. We're back into the cycle of A. We will hear the Gospels mostly of Matthew through this whole year. They shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into what? It's pruning hooks. There's just feet beat their spears into pruning hooks, and no nation will train for war again. I spent about 30 years of my life in the New York metropolitan area, and had gone to the UN building, several times to visit. And it was on one trip when Joan and I took our daughters to New York for 4 or 5 days, and we spent like tourists. We went around to all of the tourist things that we had never seen while we lived there. And it was on this trip that we walked to the UN building, and across the street from the UN building, in a little park area with some benches, is a cornerstone. And it presumably was the cornerstone of the original UN building in San Francisco. And on it were those very words. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. And no nation will ever train for war again. 700 years before Christ, Isaiah said those words, inspired by God and the Holy Spirit. And here was the nations of the world at the end of World War II, still yearning, unrelentingly yearning for peace on earth. Would that it would be so. Doesn't mean we have to stop praying for it. We keep praying for it. First Sunday of Advent, we're given a warning, a pretty stern warning. Jesus says, "Stay awake." And it's echoed by Paul in the second reading, where he says to the Romans, "It's time for you to wake from sleep." Now, you got to remember to put this into context. When the people first heard this, their sense of urgency was inspired by and just given more impetus to that, is because they expected the second coming Jesus was going to come back during their lifetime. And even though it hasn't happened yet, we don't know, no one knows the day or the hour. Jesus said, only the Father. And here we are all of these years later, but we do know for a fact that our time on earth, yours and mine, is limited. And it means that we have to be prepared. Someone very wise, a wise person once said, the most dangerous day of our life was the day when we heard the word and we knew the meaning of tomorrow. And we all know we have that gene in us, that procrastination gene. Never do today what I can put off till tomorrow. And let's face it, we all have that. We have to fight that. The great Protestant theologian William Barclay told a story about Satan. Of course, the prince of devils was going to send 3 of his lieutenant devils down to earth. And he was having their exit interview with them before they left. And he looked at the first devil and he said, "What are you going to do when you get down there to deceive people and to destroy them?" The devil said, "I'm going to convince them that there is no God." Satan said, "No, that's good." He looked at the second devil. "What are you going to do?" He said, when I get down there, I'm going to convince people that there is no hell. Satan said, that's good. He looked at the third and he said, what are you going to do to deceive people? And the third devil said, I'm going to be a little bit less intellectual. I'm just going to convince people that they have all the time in the world to prepare for death and for the second coming. And Satan said, that's the best of all. He said, you will do that, and you will deceive and destroy many. And that's what this readings are about, is telling us that we need to be prepared. Because we do not know the hour or the time of when it's going to be our time. And how do we do that? Well, Paul suggests, we throw off some things and we put on other things. He says we throw off all of those deeds that are in darkness, all of those habits that maybe just keep us separated from the love of God. We got to throw off bigotry and hatred and unforgiveness and all of those things, or that throw off that idea that we're better, that we're above everybody else. We got to throw off that insatiable addiction that we have to have the newest and the best of everything. And let me throw off the latest iPhone, iPad, smartphone, whatever. And I'm talking to you, I'm not smart enough. I have a smartphone, but I don't know how to operate it. So I probably shouldn't even have one, but I do. But that's an insatiable urge in most people, and a lot of people today. If someone goes out of the house without their phone, they're like they're lost. What did we do years ago? We waited till we got home, and then we dialed the phone. Remember the dial phone? A thing of the past. It's an antique now. But we got to throw off all of those things that separate us from the love of God. And then he says you got to put on the armor of Christ. You got to do things to make us prepared so that when we face the Lord, he doesn't say to us, who are you? I don't know you. And we can do simple things. We can take the opportunity to go on a retreat. Go to the Christ Renews His Parish retreat right here. Make a Cursillo. Join a prayer and share group. Join a Bible study. Men, get up in the morning at 6:30. Father Tom has a neat Bible sharing at 6:30 on Wednesday morning. And we can certainly use more people. And what we do is we share the readings for the week coming up. Neat way of doing it. We can pray more. We go in the car. And like we used to do as a kid, and my cousin is here and she remembers this. Every place we went, we said the rosary. And as kids, of course, are we going to do it again? It was a perfect way of taking the time, shut off the radio, shut off the iPhones, and say the rosary. I've gotten into the habit lately, and I'm not holding myself up, but I ride my bike a lot now. When I ride my bike, I say the rosary on my fingers. And suddenly, I don't even know I've gone 5 or 6 miles when I say the rosary. Very simple things. But it's keeping me in touch with the Lord. It's making prayer. Remember, prayer doesn't change God. Prayer changes us and makes us open to the will of God. Be prepared. There's a neat story about an elderly lady who was a very fastidious housekeeper. And she, every night before she went to bed, she dusted, she vacuumed, she put everything back. And one night, her and her husband came home late from a dinner engagement. And he said, honey, don't do those things. You're tired. Go to bed. And she said, no, I have to do it. And he said, nobody's going to come. Who's going to see it? And she said, in the middle of the night, if Jesus comes for you or me or both of us, I don't want him coming into a dirty house. Is the house of our soul dirty? Is it ready Are we prepared? Are we doing enough? You know, the other thing that we can put on is we can get involved in a ministry. And no matter what stage of our life, we can get involved in a ministry. And thank God in this parish we have ample opportunity to get involved in a ministry. Join the teams that feed the hungry every Sunday afternoon or Saturday night. Mother Teresa, is reported, once said to a youth who visited her and said, "What can I do? What can I do to make myself more like Christ and to emulate Christ?" And Mother Teresa looked at him and said, "You have the gospel right in your hand." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "All you have to do is remember, you did it to me." Matthew 25, "As often as you did it to the least of my brothers and sisters, you did it to me." Gospel right here in our hands. And if we do that, if we try our best to do it, when we meet the Lord, He won't have to say to us, "I don't know you. Who are you?" Hopefully, He will say to us, "Welcome, good and faithful servant. Come into the house of my Father, and a merited crown awaits you." So stay awake. The night is far gone, and the day is near. Peace.